Hey guys, this is Cole Liker.
Hi, I'm Neil Collins.
You are listening to the Unused Substitutes.
The Unused Substitutes.
And you're listening to the Unused Substitutes.
Get off the bench!
Hey there, Little Red Riding Hood, I got a problem and it's complicated. Going through text and I just can't ignore the signs. There now, it's so loud it hurts. Hear me growl, hear me howl when the full moon
On the throw, ball's gonna bounce down, it's free in the box. Bicycle kick! Goal! Rowdies! What a play! What a shot! And it's 1-0 Rowdies!
Hear me growl, you see me run, you see me jump. Try to fight, but I emerge with the prize in hand. You better watch out, it's gonna take more than what you got. All eyes are on me and the silence is deafening. You're so helpless against this full moon. Don't ever say I didn't warn you, because I came to play, came to play, I came to play, came to play, I came to play, came to play, I came to
Georgie Wistoff. Oh, the Bengals! He takes the bagel off!
Good evening, everybody. It's 8 o'clock on Wednesday night, and you are listening to the Unused Substitutes, live on Radio St. Pete, part of the Beautiful Game Network, and sponsored by Roughneck Scarves and Golden Goal Press. My name is Matt, and on the other end of this connection is a guy who definitely is not a secret Russian agent stealing your faces through various apps. Steven, how are you doing tonight?
Well, considering that I am still me, I am doing fantastic, especially considering that I'm going to celebrate the fact that you and I both got the prediction for last week spot on. So not only are we your golden goal, everything about predictions and stuff, we are, as far as your gospels, we are also your seances now. So thank you for tuning in. If you're listening to us live, if you're listening to us on the podcast, we appreciate you also as well. And thank you, obviously, for using us to kind of get yourselves warmed up and recapped from the previous week and ready for the next one. So I am excited about the fact that we've got a really amazing game upcoming this weekend, and we did not lose at Pittsburgh.
Now let's clear it up. If we were going to put ourselves on some kind of scale of predictions here, you're like an oracle, maybe the Southern Oracle from Neverending Story, if you get the reference. I'm more of the Magic 8-Ball. Let's put it that way. I luck into it every now and then.
Well, you know what? Hey, you know what? When you're right, you're right. That's all that matters. And I thought we did pretty fantastic. So I'm going to take it. I'm going to take it to the bank, and we will continue to ride this wave of prediction gloriousness to what this weekend will bring.
All right, so the prediction we referred to was that the Rowdies would travel to Pittsburgh to Highmark Stadium and come away with a 1-1 draw, which is exactly what happened. Pittsburgh scored first on a hotly contested penalty, as to whether it was a penalty or not. It did have some other consequences we'll talk about later. Rowdies leveled the score late in the game with a goal, his return debut goal, return, whatever we're going to call it, for Lucky Kasana. Trades paid off pretty well so far. He's secured 4 points for us in the 2 games that he's played. What do you think of the game, Steven?
Well, there was a lot to digest in that game. I mean, obviously, Pitt's been a solid team all year, right? Like, they haven't lost at home. They have quietly been good because they just haven't played a lot of games yet this season, so they're kind of buried in the standings, not really through fault of their own, something that we've been highlighting several weeks now. This was really a weird game because of just how bizarre some of the lineup choices were. I mean, granted, we pretty much saw most of the same stalwarts in the back, but Leon Taylor starting, having Gonzalez slide to the back as the attacking midfielder role was kind of weird. And it's funny because it's like I saw at least one reaction as far as Taylor's performance, and everybody's like, well, Taylor didn't really exist much on the field, things like that. I don't really want to put a lot of pressure on him as far as immediate reactions go, because it's not like we put him in the field for his first start of the season against Swept Park. You know, like if he's invisible against Swept Park, then like, what are we doing? You know, why are like you're clearly not having a good year if you can't stand out there. But
Right.
We're going against Pitt, at Pitt, a place that we have been terrible at forever. And so like I don't want to just go after the guy. Like I really want to kind of give him a break and say, it's hard to judge because you're playing against one of the better defenses in the league already. You haven't started a single game all year. You've barely hit the pitch. So I think my criticism about that game has less to do with Leon Taylor and far more to do with the fact that I think I would be curious to pick Neil's brain as to why he thought Gonzatti being an attacking mid was the right call there. And for that matter, Doherty. Because like Doherty has always been a very defensive, quiet-minded defensive midfielder. And it doesn't complement Aduro well if you are trying to play up the field or play a high pressure, because Doherty's not that style player. And so it was kind of weird in that context that like we didn't have the same pressure in the midfield. And it was pretty obvious from the get-go that was the big difference in that game as far as why Pittsburgh was able to kind of control the pitch, is that we weren't able to pressure them because the right people weren't in the right places. And so I personally would love to pick Neil's brain on that to see what he saw in Pitt that made him think that we could take up those players in those positions to do it. You know, one thing that we were highlighting going into the week was the type of formations that Pitt usually played with during the year, that they had done a lot of like 5-back sets going into the season, or, you know, lately, at least the last like 6 or 7 games in a row. And they came out officially in a 4-3-3 against us and really tried to kind of attack us in a lot of ways, which, again, I don't know if maybe that played a part in it. Maybe under a 5-back system, maybe Neil thought with the players that we had in those positions that maybe that might be better. I don't know. I'd love to pick the head. I'd love to find out why. But yeah, I thought the biggest issue with that game was Gonzatti. And it was funny because the substitutions in that game, and I'm not even going to say because they happened to score the goal, but the substitutions that we made, not just the fact that we made the right, like at the right minute marks, it was all the right players coming in. And they were all being assigned to the right positions. And we were transferring people to their correct positions. And it was funny because after we made the third sub, or while we were making the third sub, I went ahead and tweeted out at like right around little after 8:30 that was all the perfect subs. Like everything was perfect. We went back to the regular shape. We went back to the regular player positioning. I mean, we had Tejada slide out to the right and Kasana went up front, but Tejada's played plenty of games on the right, and we've highlighted his performances individually playing as an outside mid where, you know, there have been plenty of games where we don't miss a step. And it was great, the fact that like we were able to identify that was the right move to make, that we did, he did, and then the players got the result that we needed getting that goal. So I you know, it's funny because I remember at one point we highlighted the fact that we thought like the most important part of that game was Neil Collins. And it's funny because here's another example where I kind of think that's the highlight of that game was Neil Collins coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll say this. There's one thing about this that obviously the big topic of conversation, the big thing that everybody was trying to stir controversy about, and the team was obviously trying to drive social media hits and everything else, was the penalty kick decision. Here's my thing. Was it a light touch? Yes. Did he go down easy? Yes. But you know something? It's contact. It's in the box. He went down. You can't not call that. You can't not call that. I'm sorry. Like, if you are letting players touch other players and they lose their step, and I'm sorry, but it's one thing if you put a shoulder against somebody. It's another if you're kicking his feet. And he made contact. It doesn't matter if it was enough or if you think it was enough. Like, if contact's made and the player decides to go down, that's soccer.
Yeah,
and as a defender, you have to be careful about that.
It's one of those that if it was the other way around, we'd be yelling
Screaming.
for it to be a penalty. Yeah, and
yes,
and deep down inside saying, maybe not, but I'll take it. The key thing is don't get yourself in that situation. I mean,
yes, because a good striker is going to be fishing for fouls, especially in the box. They're gonna let that foot linger out there. They're gonna try and cut you off, hoping that you're not expecting that, and that maybe you just get tripped up feet and you get the call. That's elementary striker tactic as far as on an individual dribbling level and things like that. You're gonna be doing what you can to fish for that. I mean, up to and including tripping over your own feet at a position where you don't think the referee can notice right away, and drawing a penalty thinking that, seeing where the ref thinks that the defender's tripped them. And I've seen it, like at the highest levels, you see that every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta be more careful. I mean, and it's one of those unfortunate things, and I say this out of love because I'm a defender too. It's so hard to do that, so I can't really fault Pape for drawing that, but it is what it is. You gotta be careful. I mean, that's the bottom line, and that's the interesting thing about the fact that we had another penalty kick goal against us. And it's funny because most of these PKs are really not blatant fouls. We're not getting red cards. We're not stopping players from scoring a goal in the context that they're in the motion of shooting, which is one of the big highlights nowadays. Like, it's not those types of tackles. It's just little dinkers.
Yeah.
Where there's just enough contact made. You're doing it at just the wrong angle, as far as where you're making contact with the opponent. And they're drawing penalties against us. And I'm going to be honest. There are going to be those that are probably going to say that this might be a trend. This is systematic. This is something that we have to really address, and we really have to sit down. I'm not pressing that button because right now I think it's just a string of bad luck. Because realistically, any team can do that to anybody. And I think it's just a little bit of bad luck on our part that we've just happened to be kind of get caught in those situations where the referees are being like, they're catching it. And I think that luck will probably swing. Like, if this is one of those like summer doldrum moments and then we'll just kind of rebound in the fall, I'll be okay with that. As far as, I don't want PKs in October. I don't care if I get a PK in a late game, against Sweat Park in July,
Instead of it being a trend, could it possibly be a strategy? Are teams doing this knowing the style our defenders play and some of the reputations that the players have for being a little, playing on the line, for being a little physical, for being a little rough back there? Or is it something that they're trying to do to exploit that possibility?
I'll say this, and it actually brings up a very interesting point, because a lot of people, when I was watching this game too, is that it did not feel necessarily like the calls on the pitch were like seemingly going both ways. And in a context, and I'm being very specific about this, is the fact that like we only had officially one more foul called against us than Pittsburgh did against them.
Right.
But when we're watching that game, it honestly didn't feel like that. For long stretches of that game, it felt, just as a partisan viewer, it felt like there were more calls going against us. And I'll say this, that's going to come with the territory of trying to be a high press team.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the type of thing. We're extremely physical on the pitch. And I think that's just going to be a symptom of that type of play. Now, did this weekend highlight a possible way of combating that is going down easy? Maybe it might be. It might be. That might end up being a strategy. Not necessarily just in the box, like you were alluding to, that maybe it's a way to draw penalties to get goals against a team that's had a stout defense. I think it might be something that teams recognize as a way to try and disrupt our flow and disrupt our ability of doing a high press, is going down easier. And that's going to be something that, as individual players, our guys are going to have to recognize some of that and put themselves into a position where you don't really give the opponent an easy out. You know, if he knows he's going to lose that ball and you put an arm on his back just hard enough, if I'm the opposing team, I'm going to go down and see if I can't draw a foul if the ball's like in front of me and the player and the defender and the Rowdies defenders behind me.
Right.
I'm going to go down depending on where I'm on the field just to see if I can't draw that foul. And as a Rowdy, we're going to have to be very careful about that going forward because a smart team is absolutely going to exploit that. And we've seen that at times during the year where players do tend to go down easy against us. And that's going to be part and parcel of the fact that we are so physical. You know, something we mentioned last week. It's amazing how physically dominant we can be over some teams in this league, and that's going to come with that territory of other teams trying to exploit that difference, and that's one way that they can do it.
All right, so the Rowdies get out of the game with a draw, get their 40th point on the season, and I went back and took a look at everything later on that evening. Rowdies had a total of 41 points last year. They got their 41st and their final point in the 32nd game of the year. I want to believe is what it was last year, is the second to last game, and we're at 40 points on 19 games. So wanted to get the win, of course, but stayed on top of the table with the combination of some other results. Actually managed to still sit kind of pretty. No one in the top 10 won except for New York, who did it twice. Now, I was thinking about this when I was putting this together, when I was putting the tweet together, and I almost threw a third one on there to keep the string going, but left it alone. New York picked up 6 points last week. They leapfrogged Indy 11 back into second place. They're still 3 points behind us, and you figure they picked up 5 points total if you factor in our draw. Like, I'm looking at like some of the articles coming out of the USL site, and didn't have everybody in team of the week last week or this week, I don't believe. McCarthy's up for save of the week. Actually, I think we've managed to get him into the lead now. There's lots of articles out there about some of the flashier teams, some of the bigger name players, guys who are scoring 12, 13, 14 goals in a season, and there's just not a lot. And again, coming at this from a partisan viewpoint, not a lot about us. We're just sitting here cruising along. I kind of like this under the radar kind of thing. Like, we're doing really well, and no one's talking about it. And on one hand, it's you hate to see the work that the team is doing not getting the recognition from some of the other places covering other teams in this league. But on the other hand, it's kind of nice to sail under the radar.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. We haven't been flashy. We don't really have a, what is it? Gonzati's the closest thing we have to a Golden Boot competitor, and he's still several off the pace for the league wide because obviously they're counting Western Conference along with that.
Right.
The team itself, we're not the only really amazing defensive team because, yes, we've only allowed 12 goals all season, which of course is incredible, but so is Indy 11. Like, that's it. That's all they've given up is 12 goals. There's a team with 15 goals allowed. That's North Carolina. So, it's not like we're like 10 or 15 goals better than anybody else. We're tied for the best defense right now.
Right.
So granted, we got a couple games on hand over Indy, but still, like, we're not like leaps ahead of everybody else on that category. Goals scored, we're technically third highest in Eastern Conference, but there's a lot of teams just one goal behind us. Like, we've got 30 goals on the year. There's a lot of teams with 29 and 28. So it's weird being in this position right now where, yes, we've only lost one game, but because of the 7 draws, we're not leaps and bounds over everybody else, and we haven't played that way where there's one dominating category. Like, New York Red Bulls are who they are because they've scored so many goals. Now, granted, they played a garbage Atlanta team, and they were a man up for, I don't know how long that they were a man up for in that game, so they put 8 goals in. But that's one of the things about New York is that they're not just dominantly athletic, they also score buttloads of goals at a time when it matters, and that's not something we do.
No. We're
done far more methodical about things as far as the style of play and our rate of finishing.
We've done just enough, but we've done just enough consistently. where some of these other clubs have stretches where they're dropping points to teams that are crawling in the basement right now. You'll get to St. Louis and some of the other teams later, but Indy dropped a game. Someone else bottom, it was either Birmingham or Memphis, I believe, over the week. I know it was Hartford, I think, actually. Hartford opening their new stadium.
Dillon Stadium.
Like, we've managed to kind of avoid these traps that other teams seem to be, slipping on, some of the banana peels.
Yeah, and that's the difference, right? Like, the only thing that we've done so far this year that's been extremely noteworthy. I mean, again, I don't want to take anything away from what we've done. I mean, overall, through 19 games, it's incredible. Let's not take that away. But I mean, really, the only noteworthy statistic is one loss.
Yeah.
I mean, if you kind of want to boil it down, there's nothing else that really stands out as, oh my gosh, look at the warning signs. We're the crazy thing to follow because of XYZ. Nope, it's just that we've lost only one game. And we've been remarkably consistent. That's what it is. We don't lose.
I always throw a screenshot of the traditional table into our show notes, and they have, they've got the total points, the win, lose, draw, goal difference points, all that stuff. But they also include form, and it's just little rectangles, and it's a W is green, a draw is gray, and a red is a loss. The only two teams to borrow a Marvel Universe phrase here who don't have any red in the ledger right now are the Rowdies up in first place, 3 wins, 2 draws in the last 5 games, and Charlotte also 3 wins, 2 draws in the last 5 games. Everybody else has dropped at least one game to a loss in the top 10, and every team in the bottom 10 sometime in their last 5 games, and we managed to kind of navigate this pretty well.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting because it does bring up an interesting point that you're trying to make as far as like, is that beneficial to us in the context that we're kind of, in a weird kind of way, flying underneath the radar? And maybe that is. I mean, it's funny because like, you and I were talking before the show started about local major media presence and kind of the lack thereof, like how. We're going like 3 weeks between home games, and right up until suddenly a couple of stories came out in the last couple of days because they got a home game coming up this weekend. But like, this team just kind of like, even for a first place team, there's not a ton of hype in the area yet. So right now it's kind of beneficial. You could make an argument. It's beneficial that we're riding underneath the radar because there is literally like no pressure. It's still very loose. There's not a lot of hype going into it. I mean, just look at this weekend. Again, something you and I were talking about is look at ticket sales for this weekend. And I don't want to harp on ticket sales in the Tampa Bay area because of everything else going on, but like 3 weeks between home games where you've got a retro night with a lot of former players, coaches, people that were involved in the old team that are going to be there, meet and greets for all these older fans that really had a chance to watch them play live. And you've got the massive group coming up from Skyway Casuals that are going to really pump numbers into that supporter section. We're going to certainly be there. I mean, it's going to be a fantastic night in the supporter end, don't get me wrong. And ticket sales are just sluggish from what I can tell, from what we've been able to look at. And that's so frustrating. But it also, again, it goes back to the point of the fact that there's not a lot of pressure on the Rowdies right now. We really are still, for a first place team, in a lot of ways, we're still flying under the radar. I think there is something to that.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's nice in terms of playing on the field, but in terms of generating the attention and maybe the coverage and the guys that are buying tickets are going to be in the stands, doesn't benefit that much.
Yeah, and it's funny because like, I really don't even know the solution. Like, this is the type of night that it should be a solid crowd. We should, I mean, with rose-colored glasses on and the most highly optimistic line of thinking, I can't fathom a reason why it's not sold out this weekend already.
I know exactly why it is.
Say what?
I know exactly the reason. No Tejada.
Oh, geez, you listen here.
By the way, I'm going to tweet this out in a second. Tejada is starting tonight in the Panama Honduras game in Olympic qualifying.
Panama, El Salvador. Isn't it Panama, El Salvador?
Yeah.
You said Honduras.
I said Honduras.
All right.
He could beat them too. It doesn't matter.
This is true.
It doesn't matter who they're playing if you're starting Juan Tejada. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. All right. Any other takeaways from the game?
It's a gutsy result, and it shows the resiliency of this team, and it shows the camaraderie and the spirit that they have developed in as a culture inside the locker room. That we were able to go up to a place that we've always been bad at, that everybody knew we've always been bad at, and we were able to pull out a draw. And in a draw that for a long stretch of that game we were not playing well. Like it felt like another one of those Pittsburgh games where it was just going to go bad. We had the PK against us on not an iffy call, just an unfortunate call, and you just kind of felt like it was going to be another one of those doomsday trips. And this team has built a good culture inside the locker room. I am so happy Lucky is back. It's so much fun watching him back in a Rowdies uniform, and it was exciting having him score. So now he's got an assist and a goal in 2 games since coming back. Yes, please. Awesome. Give me more. That's amazing. I can't wait for it. And it's funny because if he's on that kind of a streak, like if he starts this weekend and Tejada's out, and say Malik is out on the right side or something like that, or maybe Najem is on the right side and they play really well, it's only going to create more roster controversy as to who you fit in where and what formational. Like the semantics on how you're going to pick players is going to get really detailed on Neil's shoulders. And I don't envy his job right now at all, because he's got just tons of pieces that he can play around with and just plug in positions. Because, I mean, what a perfect time for Tejada to be going on Olympic qualifying is with Kasana, getting things done 2 games in a row, his first 2 games on the team. As a coach, you can't ask to be in a better situation than that. Yeah, because that was the thing we were all scared of when we heard about Tejada leaving. Is, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? So we're going to put Brandon Allen in there, and now we've got Kasana. Holy crap, that's amazing. Yeah. And I just know from experience talking to Neil over the last year or two since he took over, he'll tell you he'll gladly welcome that kind of problem when the problem last year was putting together 11 players that could get on the field at one time without being injured. So he'll happily take that. Oh yeah, no, I mean, like I said, it's just a different type of challenge. Yeah. All right. So other notable results that we were keeping an eye on last week: Ottawa and Louisville drew 1-1. Charlotte and St. Louis. Charlotte, both teams kind of continued their recent pattern. Charlotte won, St. Louis didn't. They've flip-flop places on the table. Charlotte is now 10th with 23 points, thanks to a 2-1 win at home versus St. Louis. Charlotte has won, I think, unbeaten in their last 6, won 3 of their last 5. There's really only one other game. It's going to be kind of like a lot like last weekend, where it was a lot of teams in playoff positions playing teams outside the playoffs. A lot of that is going on this weekend as well. Actually, there's a bunch of games tonight that are going on right now, too. The only notable one going on this weekend with teams in the top 10 is Pittsburgh and North Carolina. Which, don't get me wrong, is a massive game. Yeah, North Carolina is in action right now tonight, so this will be their 19th game. They're going to finish the weekend on 20, so they'll be kind of level with us on games. They won't have the games in hand anymore. I don't think Pittsburgh is playing tonight, so they'll still be 1-2 games back. So our current traditional table, the Rowdies still on top with a 3-point lead over Red Bulls, equal number of games played. Indy 11 in third place, 6 points back, 2 games in hand. Kind of wipes out that advantage at that point.
North Carolina in fourth, 18 games, 31 points. Louisville. By the way, did you see the renderings for their stadium? Or I mean, they had a thing where you can like see what the view from your seat will be, and like this like virtual reality rendering of their stadium.
Matt, are you either? I'm not sure if you're trying to make me wet or if you're trying to make me really just jealous in general, like an angry jealous, because I wanted to do things to those pictures of that stadium. I'm just saying.
I've put them top of my road trip wish list for next season. I know I can't go this year for some reason.
You
and everybody else, yeah.
I was going to say, you and a bunch of supporters in like 17 other Eastern Conference cities.
I still want to try and pull off the end of the year trip to Hartford. That would be a lot of fun.
If they were at Rentschler, that would have been cool, but at Dillon, I don't give a crap.
See, I want to go. It looked like they were having fun at Dillon last week. I want to do that one. Louisville's in fifth, 19 games, 30 points, 10 points back. Nashville, sixth, 29 points. Ottawa, 7th, 29 points. Nashville has the edge over the first tiebreaker and wins. Pittsburgh, 26 points. Charleston, 23 points. And Charlotte, 23 points. St. Louis has dipped below the playoff Mason-Dixon line at 21. Bethlehem Steel, 19. Loudoun, 16. Birmingham, 16. Memphis, 14. They're in action against Nashville tonight, if I remember correctly. Atlanta, 13, and I think Atlanta is who North Carolina is playing right now. We've got Swope Park and Hartford are playing, so it's a toilet bowl matchup there. Hartford in 17th and Swope Park dead last in 18th place. So kind of the key things we're looking at here. Charlotte's into the top 10. I don't expect it to last because they're off until the 24th, a week from tonight. So some of these teams are going to have a chance to maybe catch up, take over a little bit. I mean, St. Louis is the only one who can right now. Bethlehem's 2 games, you need 2 straight wins to get that, and I don't think they've done that this season. St. Louis continues their downward trend, but still have up to 4 games in hand on everybody above them. That only matters if they get a result, though. By the way, I think it's funny, and I don't think we've brought it out into the open yet, but like the hottest debated topic between you and I is whether or not St. Louis is going to make the playoffs.
It's so true. You and I go back and forth on this
at least once or twice a day.
Because you're always trying. For the record, it's always Matt trying to egg everything on. Like, he is the instigator to every one of those conversations. Because the moment the result comes out for the weekend, oh, did you see that St. Louis lost? I'm like, yeah. He's like, dude, they're not. This is your response. It's, dude, they're not making the playoffs. And I'm like,
they're not.
Matt, they have 4 games in hand, man. 4 games.
That's just 4 more chances for them to lose at this point.
They could lose this weekend and be totally fine making the playoff line. I'm just saying, like, it is funny though. Like, honestly, if you're listening to the show and if we were to show you the messages that go back between me and Matt during the week, literally this is the one thing, the one topic that gets brought up literally every single weekend for the last probably 5 weeks in a row. And
yeah, it's not what did you think about the penalty call? It's not, oh, that was an interesting substitution. It's, man, that St. Louis Charlotte fight's going to be a hot one.
It is only you. It is only you doing this.
No, it's just you refusing to accept reality. You're in the Matrix, man, and I'm woke. You got to wake up. How are you going to be the Oracle when you're still plugged into the Matrix?
No. I'm going to be happy with my blue pill, and you have a nice day.
And then Red Bulls, only top 10 team to win last week, and they did it twice. Indy, North Carolina FC, Nashville, and St. Louis all lost. Everybody else drew. So you'd rather win if you can, but a draw was not a terrible result for the Rowdies last weekend. Our points per game table hasn't been a whole lot of change, I don't think.
There has been. Are you ready? The top 10 in the points per game are all the same, and they're all in the same positions.
Well, except Charlotte's.
No,
we don't have the same top 10 in the traditional and the points per game anymore.
This is true
because St. Louis is still up there and Charlotte isn't.
Yeah, the actual PPG, technically speaking, there's been no change. Now there's a team that's tied at 10th because Charlotte now ties
Right.
the 10th spot's position with the 10th and 11th. But officially speaking, technically, the other 10 are still the 10.
You know what? We need to. I'm going to make an executive decision and institute a tiebreaker here. In the event of a tie between two clubs, the club with the alphabetically first abbreviation will go first. So actually, Charlotte should be in there over Charleston at this point. So boom, I've got Charlotte in the playoffs. Deal with it.
You listen here. I'm gonna substitute that for my own reality and say that it's gonna be based on team nickname, not city origination. So that means that the Battery come before the Independents. So there. Have a nice day.
Well, I mean that's what the Confederacy thought too, and it didn't work out for them. So you just go with that. That was a quick pickup. I'm proud of myself on that one. All right, the Rowdies are still on top of the points per game table, 2.11. Indy with a straight 2 points per game. Red Bulls 2 at 1.95. North Carolina 1.72. Ottawa and Nashville 1.61. So we've got to flip-flop them for my alphabetical rule. Louisville City 1.58. Pittsburgh 1.53. St. Louis 1.31. Charleston with 1.15, which is the same average that Charlotte has, and also not far. Loudoun's only like 0.01 away from that. Yep. So again, and we keep saying you're going to have to keep an eye on those two teams. We'll see what happens. Loudoun's in action tonight against North Carolina FC. So this will change in the next looks like 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, before the end of the show.
The biggest difference is last week you had to have at least 1 1/3 points, and now we've got teams getting in with 1.15 around up to like 1.2. So you're getting a little bit more margin of error for now, but that'll start to go away as some of these teams make up the games they have in hand.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely going to be a big case. I applaud Charlotte for trying to make the effort here. The problem's going to be is that games in hand question. Now, granted, they're certainly trying to do what they can to put pressure on everybody, but when you've played, more games than everybody else in the league, that is, I don't know of a situation where that's ever going to necessarily be a distinct advantage, especially when you're down below in the table. Like, it's one thing to be number one and have the most games played in the league. That's a comfortable position to be in. But if you're fighting for a playoff, you're barely at that line, and you've played the most games, I don't care if you're on a win streak. It doesn't necessarily, I don't know, it's weird. It's a weird position to be in for them. I readily admit that I did not go back to listen to our old shows to see which teams we had predicted a couple weeks ago because I don't remember. But Charleston's form still bothers me a little bit. I think that's the one team that I'm just not convinced on right now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the big question right now, as far as the fact that like their movement, obviously they didn't move this weekend. I think they had a game get postponed or something like that. But that is the team that I don't know. I'm not convinced on them staying up as far as above that line. And I think maybe Charlotte might get in because of them. I think, again, you and me will debate this till we die, but I think St. Louis is fine this year.
We'll see. All right. So in other news, like we said, alluded to a little bit earlier, Juan Tejada is on international duty with the Panama U22s. I have 23 in the notes. Panama is calling it the U22s for Olympic qualifying. They're playing 2 games against El Salvador, 1 tonight. Looks like the players are warming up based on pictures from the Panamanian Football Association Twitter. And they will play again on Sunday, and then that's it. He'll come back after that, preferably non-injured and ready to return to action the following weekend. But he will be out for this weekend's game. The big news that came out a little bit earlier today, back when Bill Edwards owned the team, he had worked with Hard Rock to do buses for away games, and I think it was like we went to Jacksonville, we went to Fort Lauderdale, and it was for. I mean, I think they were mob trips only, right? It was for the mob members only.
It was, I think, Wow. Let's see. You're going back a few years here. I think it was open to us first. Like we had first crack at seats or something like that. But that's going back a couple years now.
Well, they announced today the official charter bus company of the Rowdies, Entourage Travels, Entourage something. I think I'm probably getting that wrong. Are offering buses to everybody, first come first serve. Buses to Charleston on was that August 3rd, and then buses to North Carolina FC and round trip. They're not just going to take you there and drop you off. Buses to Charleston, North Carolina FC on August 21st. It's a $65 round trip ticket. You go up the morning of the game, depart from Al Lang Stadium, and return home promptly after the game ends. Does not include the game tickets, so you've got to have a ticket for that as well. But Ralph's Mob has links for tickets for all that too. If you can check out their Twitter, you can check out their Facebook page, and find information about that. I think they even have possibly discounted seats for Ralph's Mob members. So check their social media for the info. I was really because my wife and daughter leave about 7 in the morning tomorrow. They're off to North Carolina for a week. They come back next Thursday. We were talking about going. I was gifted a ticket to the MLS All-Star Game 2 weeks from tonight in Orlando, and as I told the person offering it, I will gladly take a ticket to go cheer for the away team anytime they're playing a team made up of all MLS players in that stadium. I think I covered all my bases there. We were talking about going to that, staying over for the night, and then going up to Charleston for that weekend for the game. The only problem is, like, I go back to work. We have the week before school starts for, setting up our rooms and meetings and finding all the new BS that we have to do this year is the Monday after, and I really don't feel like driving back from Charleston and then turning around and getting up the next morning to be at work at like 8:30. Might be okay for someone your age. It's annoying as crap for me, but I'm seriously considering this Charleston trip. The North Carolina one I can't do because it's on a Wednesday, and that's just not going to work. But this one, I'm really thinking about doing this one to Charleston.
Yeah, when I found out today that was actually that they were going to be going ahead and coming back the same night, I'm almost guaranteed probably going to be doing the bus,
right?
Because I'm not one that stays overnight. Like if you've followed me on my crazy adventures around the continental United States following this club, I don't stay overnights like almost ever. I usually only ever go out to a game, watch the game, and then I'm immediately coming back home. I don't really I want to save myself the overnight expenses. So yeah, when I found out that was going to be a trip that we were coming back on, I'm like, man, I have to, because I really don't want to drive up there and, put that many miles on my car again. I'd rather just take the bus. I love the bus. A nice air conditioned where I'm not driving.
Oh
yes.
Man. So remember the last bus trip to Fort Lauderdale, Georgie's hat trick game, the 10-minute tailgate, all that?
Mm-hmm.
That was the greatest bus ever. Like, the bus had fake hardwood floors, and it had Wi-Fi, and it was just extremely that was literally a brand new bus. If it's a bus like that, you're getting a heck of a deal at $65. Plus, this is the last time that the Rowdies are going to play in that stadium in Charleston. It's been sold. It's being torn down after the season. A lot of people, pay tribute to Crew Stadium, whatever they call it now,
MAPFRE,
being the first soccer-specific stadium in MLS. This is actually the first soccer-specific stadium, I believe, in the U.S. And it's coming down at the end of the year because, damn it, we got to build condos somewhere, apparently.
No, the owners need money. That's what it is.
Well, I don't know how much. I don't know if they're getting that much out of it. They've got to find a new place. This is a heck of a stadium. I know the Skyway crew loves going up there for that. There's a bar in the stadium that they hang out at. It's going to be the last leg of the no quarter derby. The trophy will be decided because the first game ended in a draw, right? So it's all to play for that weekend.
Yeah, I believe so. Right. And it was a draw against Charleston.
So there'll be a lot of stuff going on. Charleston's having their Pride Night for that game, and they're selling. I know the Mob has tickets. Charleston, I think, is selling tickets for like $5 or $10. Like, it's a good deal to go if you can get a $75 ticket all together for bus and game and all that stuff, and then turn around and come back home. So I'm really leaning towards doing it. Road games are like one of the few that I get to go to and just be a fan, because I don't have to do. I'm not doing any of the press coverage stuff. So I like to do a couple of those every year. It'll be fun. I'm really thinking about it at this point.
No, this is if anybody is seriously on the fence, this is the last time you're going to get to watch a game at the it's gone through so many different names over the years, but Charleston Stadium,
MUSC or something now, whatever it was. It was blackballed when it started. I remember that.
It was blackballed when it started, and let me tell you something. That is one of the most historic grounds out there, and I don't care what anybody says. I mean, that's going to be how I feel about it. And if you've never had a chance to go up there and play, it's a quaint park, but it's amazing. It's lower division soccer. It's exactly what you would expect for lower division soccer, and you got to go. You have to go. We have got to put up a big presence there. We want to make sure that the team feels our presence, because it's not just about the memories of what the Battery have been for U.S. soccer over the years. This is still a big, really, really important road match for the Rowdies. We're going up against, in that game, we're going to be going up against a playoff team. If you're on the fence, if you've never been to a Rowdies road game, if you've got friends that aren't sure, that bus is a great opportunity. And I know people have already purchased tickets for going by train. It wouldn't surprise me. I'm pretty sure I already saw somebody that said they were visiting or driving down or something like that. So, like, get to that game. We want to make sure we have a presence, because that's going to be important, not just for us, but for the guys too on the field.
Yeah, I think Kevin's coming over from
if you're gonna have a traveling section with as much different opportunities for getting there, we cannot be represented by like 10 people. We have to make sure we have a section. So let's get a bunch of people up there.
I mean, like, it's literally the end of my summer vacation. I want to do that as the end of the road kind of deal. All right, so they'll have more info as it goes. I know the bus company's pretty serious about promoting it, because when I checked my phone this morning, I was reading the Mob post just as I was getting notifications that the bus company started following us on Instagram. So I don't know. Maybe they'll reach out and we can offer some kind of deal to listeners as well too. But I'm definitely going to try and do this one. But before we get to that game, we've got this weekend's game against St. Louis, the team that is not going to make the playoffs this year, coming to Al Lang for the final time this season, because they're not going to make the playoffs this year. We played them early on in the season. So in that game, we went to St. Louis. It was a draw. They've gone 3-5-5 since facing the Rowdies earlier this year, and since I put the effort in this afternoon to research that. You talk about trends, and we talked about how we've been able to avoid the playing down to your competition thing that the bug we've been bitten by in the past. It seems like that's exactly what St. Louis is doing right now. The teams that they beat include Atlanta and Swope Park. Their losses have come to Birmingham, Hartford, Bethlehem, Swope, and Charlotte. I'm pretty sure that at the time they lost those games, none of those teams were in playoff positions. Maybe Bethlehem was there or close to. I don't remember. I haven't checked how they've done this year, but the rest of those teams have been wallowing below the cutoff line for quite a while. Their draws, 5 draws, Pittsburgh, Charleston, and Louisville were all 0-0 draws. And then 2-2 draws to North Carolina, and they came back from 2 down to Loudoun to draw that game as well. So they're still, I mean, and a lot of this was going on with their Open Cup run, which is where they were having the opposite result and winning games until they got to, the quarterfinals. So there's the argument to be made that they were focusing on that over this, but still you got to pick up win the games against the teams you're supposed to be. If you're going to lose or draw, do that with the teams that are around closer around you, and maybe that makes more sense. But both of the clubs that from USL that got to the quarterfinals have suffered greatly in their league form during that time, and I think they both lost last weekend as well when they were in their first league games after the cup run ended. So we'll see how being out of the cup now affects their they start to turn it around. Hopefully St. Louis won't start this weekend. We mentioned earlier they're currently sitting 11th in traditional table, 9th in the points per game. Their leading goal scorers, Russell Cicerone and Sam Fink. Fink is, I believe, the guy who scored against us earlier, with 4 goals each. The offense has not been especially prolific for St. Louis this year. They're still playing like they're in the Western Conference, where all of this is good enough to get you a playoff spot, but it doesn't work that way in the East, kids. Their leading assists, Lewis Hilton with 3. Most shots, Kyle Gregg with 27. Most chances, Hilton with 30. Fenlison has been their he's the keeper that's played the overwhelming majority of games. I think 14 out of 16. Has kept 6 clean sheets. They're giving up 1.2 goals a game. They're scoring 1 every, I believe, 72 minutes. They're averaging about 48% possession on the year. And playoff moves, they just acquired. Hold on, I just had this pulled up and I lost it. They just acquired Master Casher, who is, I want to say he played for either Charlotte or Charleston recently. And most recently, they just acquired him from Real Monarchs. He's an attacking midfielder. And I just saw they made one other move, and it may have been bringing one guy in and shipping one guy out, because it looked like it was a position-for-position swap. Casher's a good player. I would assume we'll see him play, if not start, this weekend. What are your thoughts on St. Louis, other than you think they're going to win the league?
Oh, would you stop it? They're not going to win the league. We're going to win the league. Jeez Louise. But St. Louis is definitely a playoff team. So a couple things stand out. One thing, I don't know what's going on with like roster depth, but like they never bring people on the road. Or actually, for that matter, they don't really bring people at home either. Like they've always they're very consistent for the last several weeks of only having 5 subs on the bench, which is a very interesting thing because, and I don't know if it's injury related and they're thin in the depth right now because of injuries, but that means that like for the last 5 or 6 games they've played almost all of the same players.
Right.
Like one thing that we were thinking of was, when you're making these Open Cup runs, that you're going to try and rotate a lot of bodies, and they like legitimately haven't been rotating bodies. So here's the thing, and this is the big part of why I think St. Louis is fine is, and you skimmed over it when we did the overall recap of how they've done this year. Yes, they're losing games against people like, Charlotte, Swope Park, Bethlehem Steel, but they're drawing a North Carolina team. They're drawing a really good Charleston team. They're drawing a team like Loudoun, who's been significantly better lately than earlier this year. They've drawn Louisville, going back to May now. They're still competing with the best teams in the league. Don't get me. I mean, we can't take that team lightly or this team lightly just because they haven't had a good form of stretch recently in league play in terms of wins. They're far more than capable of pulling out a result. A lot of what you highlight, though, shows what their weaknesses are. They haven't had a good striker come out and score a lot of goals for them right now. That's part of the issue. Greg has been one of the strikers that have played frequently for them, and he's just not scoring enough. Their top chance maker, he's been consistent, but again, it's not enough. They're not producing the number of chances that you need. And I don't know if it's just they're playing too conservatively, because remember, if you watch the game, when we went up to St. Louis in that rather cold game, they were very conservative. They don't That style of play, I don't know how that's going to play out when we start coming into this weekend. Are they going to be able to keep up with us? I'll say this, and I'll give you this much credit. If we come out and just dominate St. Louis, then I will change my opinion about St. Louis's chances of making the playoffs at the end of the year.
Right.
But if it comes out to be an equal game, and I don't really see a reason why it shouldn't be, first of all, I think we'll be fine. And I'm telling you, this is a weird game to digest as far as trying to do predictions because of the Open Cup run. It's creates such a clouded picture because they're playing so many, I don't want to say so many extra games. It's only 2 or 3, but overall, but the formation itself has been fairly consistent as far as what they play. It's usually 4 back. They bunkered down against Atlanta when they had to play against one of the best MLS teams with their entire starting 11.
Right.
They played a 5-back system in that game, which understandably so. Who wouldn't at our level? But when you look at the fact that traditionally they do 4-4-2s. That's usually what they have. They have people like Calvert, Gregg, and Dikwa up front, rotating as far as their strikers. Omar, Hilton, Cicerone are usually midfield types. They're pretty consistent with that. Docris as well. I mean, it's been the same formation almost week in and week out with players. There's only 1 or 2 changes each week. I still think they have the capability. And I'll say this, if recent form is considered, they've been drawing top teams and they lose to bad teams. I think that might be the way that it goes. I don't know.
They're also 2-4-3 away from home. So even though we've been better on the road than we have been at home, it sounds weird to say that because we've lost 1 game. It's not a huge difference.
Right.
We've been good.
The margins
everywhere.
are so bad. It's from 0 to 1.
Right. And I messed up earlier. They didn't transfer a guy out. They lost a midfielder, Matt Thomas, who only had 1 start on the year, played in 6 games, 167 minutes total, was lost to surgery. So really, this move bringing in Kasher is kind of an upgrade. They have lost a couple of players with injury. One of their players, Austin Martz, retired, I think 2 games ago after they lost to Swope Park. So they've had some of the injury and other issues that some of the stuff that we dealt with last year. But yeah, when you look at their numbers, they've only had, let's see, 1 player, I think, who's played every game, hasn't been subbed off, Kavita. They've only played 17, right? They've played 18, haven't they?
We have the internet in front of us, and we're asking these questions.
Okay, so this is interesting. According to thanks USL for nothing, they've played 16 games. Kavita, Lewis Hilton, and Sam Fink have started 17.
US. Well, no, they're probably counting Open Cup.
They wouldn't, though. Not in league stats, though.
I don't know. I'm going to be honest. This is kind of hilarious, actually. The USL website crashes on me consistently, and I think it's because I use Microsoft Edge for a web browser.
Yeah, probably.
So it almost doesn't work. It's almost a non-functioning website on my computer. I got to download a Chrome or something.
Yeah, I don't have any problems with it, and I use Chrome for everything at the moment. Predictions. Only home game in July. Retro night. You're going to have a lot of the older team in the building. Hopefully, we'll have some good ticket sales between now and then to fill in some of the seats. What's going to happen in this game, Mr. Oracle, sir?
All right. Let's see here. I would expect...
Actually, I'm going to cut you off right there.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm going to hop in and go first because you always make your prediction, and I go, yeah, that's what I was going to say.
This is true.
So
darn it.
I'm
You
gonna
stop lighting my coattails, sir.
I'm going to go out there and put my name out there first. I'm going to say 2-0 win for the Rowdies.
2-0 win for the Rowdies. Interesting. Who scores the goals?
Lucky? Malik.
Okay, I'm going to write that down here.
Mark the virtual tape.
All right. I am going to say this game ends with the score. I will boldly go where no man has gone before, and I'm going to say 2-2 for the Rowdies and St. Louis. I think St. Louis will pick up their form a little bit because they always seem to play up to teams. And I think that now that they've had a week full of rest, I think they're going to come out a little bit on fire and a little ticked off. And now that the Open Cup run has ended, and they know that it's time to get down to business. So I'm going to say 2-2. I'm going to say we score the last goal of the game, so it's going to feel like we rescued a result from a game that could have gone worse. I'm going to say that my goal scorers are going to be Gonzatti. And I am going to say, of course, this also depends on if he starts. I'm going to predict Steinberger starts as an attacking mid for the week, and I'm going to go with him, assuming, of course, that Tenari's not back. And then, of course, that whole prediction goes out the window. But that's what I'm going to predict on paper right now for my 2 goal scorers.
Yeah, he's got to be getting close. I don't think he'll start. Maybe we see him on the bench. Jaime Siach was on the bench for Pittsburgh, and I believe for the game before, so he's getting close to seeing some action, hopefully. So Tenari's got to be getting pretty close to getting back too. Yeah, we'll see the match preview, and we'll get some injury updates in the next day or two. One thing we definitely do know, the penalty in Pittsburgh. Oh, I'm putting alliteration together in my head before I even say it. The penalty in Pittsburgh puts Pop Diakite on 4 yellows, 1 away from suspension. St. Louis, I believe, doesn't have anybody on discipline warning or anything, so they're free to come out and just hack players down left and right. So we'll keep an eye out. Diakite might be playing a little more cautiously, trying to avoid that suspension, so they don't go on the road and not have him available for that game afterwards. I think it's after this we go and play Red Bull. Yeah,
and that's a really
a game where you would like to have your full defense available. Yeah, that's, oh God, I am dreading that match. But yeah, that's going to be a I'd rather not think about the last time we went and played Red Bull away.
I can't think of a good time we've ever had playing at Red Bull away. But anyways,
no, but definitely not the last one.
Well, this is true.
I mean, that's where the situations that got us into this where we are now began. Really, the flipping the 5-0 results from the week before against Ottawa to losing 5-0. Okay, let's just not go there. All right, so let's wrap this up. Your We Love You for the week?
I'm going to go with the super obvious choice this week because that's what I do every now and then. I flip the script from obscure to the more well-known selections. I'm going with Lucky Kasana. We love you. Congratulations on... First of all, it's awesome having you back. We love the fact that you're back in town. We did see the pieces that you've done with local news and everybody talking about your coming back. Congratulations on scoring your first goal back with the Rowdies now that you're back on the club. We love you, man.
I'm going to go with the guy who I really wish was going to be at Retro Night to bring his modern take on some of the classic Rowdies hairstyles. Juan Tejada. Good luck tonight. Good luck on Sunday. Don't get hurt. Please don't get hurt. Maybe don't get hurt more than good luck. I saw the lineup, I was like, oh, cool, he's starting, and then I thought, wait a second, it'd be really great if he just didn't play at all and just came back and everything was fine. But no, I want him to go out there and show off and have a good time. He's earned it. So we love you to Juan for that one. All right, thank you to Wolfface for the theme music, to Radio St. Pete for the platform, and to everyone else who is a supporter and a friend of the show. Thank you to you guys. Please continue to share, subscribe, rate, and review. And thank you for making time in your schedule for us, either live or on podcast later. If you would like to support the show on a continuing basis, you can go to patreon.com/unusedsubspod. Did you see people trying to blackmail me yesterday?
No.
So one of the things we had mentioned in the past is, we made Dan do all this stuff, and for some reason no one ever said, what about you, Matt? And I was just, But at some point I kind of felt bad for putting Dan through a little torture, so I had said, if we get to whatever level it was, I forget, like $150 a month or whatever, that I would come to a game and like body paint from head to waist. And someone said, are you ever going to do that? And I said, I don't think we ever hit the goal. And they said, well, why don't you, put it back out there again? And I kind of, I said, look, the results seem to say that people don't want to see this. It's more of a torture for them than it is for me. Like, maybe it has to be 150 or I will show up in body paint. I'm going to come in flesh-colored body paint this weekend where you really can't tell. That's my my thing. But people are trying to get me. We've got to find out what we can torture you with at some point.
Oh, jeez.
Got to think about this. It's funny. I'm going to throw it out there. Dan and I used to always. He always fretted about how we spent so much time talking about his food issues. You ever listen to the Total Soccer Show?
I saw your tweet about it, though. Yes. So
they did kind of a crossover thing. They did a live show at Audi Field for the Screaming Eagles. Them and the Cooligans, who Ian from Skyway Casuals met them last year at the ISC meeting, and they put it out there. And like there was two parts, one on the Total Soccer Show's feed and one on the Cooligans feed. And so like I want to say like half of the Cooligans episode was them just talking about their weird food things, and I felt vindicated for every moment we ever spent on it. I was very proud of it. I knew we were on the right path. So we'll have to find some more food-based things possibly. Thank you, as always, to our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, the official scarf supplier of MLS, USL, and US Soccer. Get custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. Stephen, you mentioned the Skyway Casuals bus. I will be on that this weekend, coming up to Al Lang. I will see you there. Hopefully the weather holds out. Last year when we did the Skyway bus trip, it poured to the point where we had to retreat onto the bus with a lot of people that we didn't even know because they weren't on the bus, but they just ran on there anyway. Luckily, there was plenty of beer, and the game went off as planned anyway. So I will see you.
For what it's worth, it's 9:00 at night, and there is a massive thunderstorm over St. Petersburg right now.
Oh yeah, I've since the show started, I've been seeing lightning outside my window, and I'm like, okay, just don't hit me.
Just don't kill the show. Please don't kill the show. Don't kill the show. Yeah.
Because
I've been doing the same thing.
We've had that happen, and it's not fun. That and just if I can avoid having the one cloud that sits at the top of the Skyway when we come over, I've had that more times than not during this time of year. So I'd like to avoid that, especially the one time that I just had to stop up there.
Did you see the story about the thunderstorm that hit up in North Florida that had like 6,500 lightning strikes in like an hour and a half or something like that? Not cloud to cloud included, just cloud to ground lightning strikes. It was like over 6,000 in like an hour.
That's not cool.
That's incredible.
Tampa Bay is the lightning capital of the U.S. They can't go stealing our stuff up there.
Right? That storm should have been down here.
I mean, North Florida is South Georgia anyway, and so it doesn't really count.
This is true. But still, I thought that was impressive because we're definitely in that weather pattern right now that I don't think it changes for this weekend. So definitely keep an eye out if you are going this weekend. definitely bring like a plastic bag or something to put your wallet in.
Yeah.
It's gonna be one of those nights where don't put yourself in a position where you need to, have a wet cell phone or something.
This might be the game that I go sit at the little press boxes in the back and watch from up there.
Hey, there you go.
It comes in handy sometimes. All right, Stephen, I will see you on Saturday. Everybody else, thanks for listening. We will see you on Saturday too. Final words?
Go Rowdies.
I like that. Let's do this.
The Rowdies will hear, the Rowdies will delegate, all around.